Detective Marcus Hale had spent the last 3 years avoiding the old archive in the basement of the precinct. The room smelled of mold, stale paper, and regret, the kind of place that clung to a man's lungs and memories. Down there, beneath flickering bulbs and stacks of unlabeled boxes, lay 12 case files, 12 unsolved murders, 12 failures that had carved themselves into the conscience of every cop who had tried to close them. They called them the Silent 12, but that night, Hale found himself standing in front of the iron door, a manila folder in his hand. Folder number 13. The folder wasn't old, nor was it covered in dust like the others. The paper inside was fresh, the photographs crisp. The body had been found only 2 nights earlier in a run-down apartment on the east side of Chicago. Female, 32, name withheld for now, strangled, left on the floor beneath a cracked window. No forced entry, no witnesses, no fingerprints that could hold water. At first glance, it was a standard nightmare in a city already choking on crime. But Hale had noticed something, a detail buried in the photographs that made his blood run cold. A strand of red twine wrapped around the victim's wrist, not tight, not to restrain her, but knotted in a way that seemed almost ceremonial. He had seen it before. In file number 7. The Silent 12 had each carried a signature, subtle but haunting, as if taunting the detectives who studied them. A shard of broken glass positioned by a body, a chess piece placed on a nightstand, a line of scripture scrawled on a bathroom mirror. They were fragments of meaning with no thread to hold them together. And now, in Dossier 13, the new case, the killer had stolen one of those fragments. The realization made Hale's stomach knot. Someone was playing with them. Someone had studied those old cases, memorized every scar of failure, and now was recreating them in flesh and blood. As Hale flipped through the photographs under the harsh light, he heard the echo of footsteps behind him. He turned sharply, hand instinctively brushing the grip of his service pistol. It was Captain Laura Jennings, her face pale from lack of sleep, her voice low. "You see it too," she said. It wasn't a question. Hale nodded slowly. "This isn't a new case. It's a resurrection." Jennings placed a small evidence bag on the table. Inside lay a folded scrap of paper, edges torn roughly. Hale slid it out carefully and unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, and cold. "Solve the 12, and you'll find me at 13." His throat went dry. Whoever this killer was, they weren't just murdering, they were orchestrating. They were binding the present to the failures of the past, forcing Hale and the others to relive every mistake, every missed clue. Jennings leaned closer, her whisper sharp. "We kept those cases locked away. No one had access. Not unless—" Her words trailed off, but Hale knew where they were going. Not unless the killer had been inside the department. Not unless the killer was one of their own. The basement lights buzzed. One bulb flickered, then went out, plunging half the archive into shadow. Hale's pulse quickened. In the silence, he thought he heard the faint scrape of paper shifting in the rows behind them, as if unseen hands were rifling through the past. He drew his gun. "We're not alone down here." Jennings stiffened, her hand reaching for her sidearm. The two of them stood in the dim glow, weapons raised, listening. Then came the sound, a slow, deliberate creak of the archive's farthest shelf, and with it, the unmistakable thud of a file dropping to the ground. They moved as one, flashlights slicing through the dark. When they reached the shelf, a single file lay open on the floor. File number 3, pinned inside, beneath the faded crime scene photos, was a new Polaroid, fresh. The ink still smelled sharp. It was a picture of Hale himself, taken less than an hour ago. Standing outside the precinct, someone had been watching him closely, and the game had already begun. Marcus Hale stared at the Polaroid in silence, his heartbeat drumming in his ears. The glossy square reflected the beam of his flashlight, the frozen image of himself staring back with clinical sharpness. The street lamp overhead in the photo was crooked, its yellow glow warped by a drizzle of rain that hadn't yet begun to fall. Whoever had taken it had been close, Too close, Jennings bent over, her lips tightening as she studied it. This was taken tonight, maybe an hour ago. Which means whoever dropped it here wanted me to find it, Hale finished. He holstered his weapon. Though the tension in his shoulders remained coiled like wire, the archive suddenly felt suffocating, the walls too close, the smell of mildew too heavy. He wanted to breathe clean air. But he also knew leaving would feel like retreat, and Hale didn't retreat. Jennings picked up the file the Polaroid had been slipped into. Case 3, she murmured. That was the foster home murder back in 2009. Victim was a 12-year-old boy, found in his bed with a broken chest piece hook, if I remember right, on his pillow. Hale's eyes narrowed. This new victim had the red twine from Case 7, and now the killer is pointing us back to Case 3. Jennings looked up at him, her gaze unreadable. He's threading them together, piece by piece. They carried the file upstairs, away from the shadows of the basement. The squad room was nearly deserted. Only the faint hum of vending machines and the occasional ring of a distant phone broke the silence. Hale set the folder on his desk, spreading out the old photos. The dead boy's face looked back at him, pale in the grainy shots, frozen in time. Beside it, he placed the Polaroid of himself. Two victims, years apart, bound by an unseen hand. He felt something crawling beneath his skin, the sense that he wasn't chasing the killer, but rather being lured along a path already drawn. Jennings poured herself coffee from a pot that tasted like ash but felt necessary. You ever wonder, she said slowly, if these silent 12 weren't unsolved because we failed, but because they were never meant to be? Solved? Hale looked at her sharply. You think the killer was here, all along, guiding the investigation, like some phantom inside the department? Jennings shrugged, though her eyes betrayed unease. Files get lost, evidence misfiled, leads go cold. Maybe coincidence, or maybe someone wanted them that way. Before Hale could answer, his phone buzzed against the desk. Unknown number. He glanced at Jennings, then answered. The voice was male, distorted slightly, as if filtered through static. Calm, deliberate. Detective Hale, it said. You've opened the wrong drawer. Hale's grip tightened on the phone. Who the hell is this? You're looking in the past, the voice continued, but you should be watching the present. She's still alive, for now. Hale's blood iced over. Who? Silence. Then a soft click, the line dead. Jennings' coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Did he say alive? Hale was already pulling up the new victim's details on the precinct computer. He scanned the coroner's preliminary report, his breath catching. The body had been officially identified as Rachel Monroe, aged 32, but the ME had noted something odd. Fingerprints didn't fully match. Son of a, Hale muttered. He grabbed his coat. The woman in the apartment. What if she wasn't Rachel Monroe at all? Jennings blinked. Then who the hell is lying in the morgue? Hale slammed the drawer shut. And more importantly, where's the real Rachel Monroe? The realization hit like a hammer. The killer hadn't just left behind echoes of old cases. He had staged a false death, baiting them into thinking the story was over. But it was only beginning. As they headed for the door, the precinct's fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, then went black. A surge of darkness swallowed the hall, and in that silence, Hale heard it again, the sound of a shutter snapping. Close, too close, like someone had just taken another picture. The blackout lasted less than a minute, but it was long enough. When the lights buzzed back to life, Marcus Hale and Captain Jennings were no longer alone. Pinned to the glass door of the squad room was another Polaroid. The tape was still curling at the edges, sticky and fresh. Someone had been close enough to walk right up to them in the dark. Hale ripped it down. The photo showed the morgue, sterile lights glaring over a white sheet. But in the picture, the sheet wasn't empty. A shadow stood beside the gurney, tall, blurred, as if the camera had caught a figure just as it moved out of frame. Jennings swallowed hard. He was inside. During the blackout, Hale's instincts screamed at him to run, to hunt, but he forced himself to stay still. The killer wanted them to chase blindly. No, Hale muttered. He's pushing us. Every step is bait. Still, the morgue called. They had to confirm what he suspected, that the woman lying there wasn't Rachel Monroe. The corridors beneath the precinct smelled of antiseptic and metal. The morgue was quiet, the hum of refrigeration units breaking the silence. A night attendant, a young man with earbuds in, barely looked up as Hale flashed his badge and demanded access. The body lay beneath a crisp sheet. Hale pulled it back. The woman's face was pale, her lips tinged blue. She was about Rachel Monroe's age, but the features didn't match the DMV photo on file. Too sharp, the chin slightly off. Jennings leaned in, her eyes narrowing. This isn't Monroe. Who is she? Hale scanned the coroner's notes again. The body had been logged with minimal verification, rushed because of the backlog. Dental records hadn't been processed yet. Whoever she was, the killer wanted them to believe she was Monroe. Why fake her death? Jennings whispered. Hale's eyes hardened. Because Rachel Monroe's alive, and she's part of the game. As if on cue, his phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He'd put it on speaker. The same distorted voice filled the morgue. Detective Hale, you found my substitute. Clever. But are you clever enough to follow her footsteps? Jennings bristled. Who are you? The voice chuckled softly, like wind against broken glass. Names don't matter. Dossiers do. 12 ghosts, and 1 living piece. Find Rachel, and you'll know me. Click. Silence. Hale stared at the dead woman, his jaw set. He wants us chasing ghosts. But Rachel, she's his endgame. They left the morgue, heading into the cold night. Chicago's streets stretched endless before them, neon signs buzzing above shuttered diners and empty sidewalks. Hale's gut told him the killer was watching from somewhere close, always close. Jennings broke the silence as they walked to his car. You think Rachel Monroe is a victim? Or an accomplice? Hale didn't answer right away. His eyes caught the reflection of the Polaroid in the rearview mirror himself, trapped on glossy paper. Right now, he said finally, I think she's both. They drove to Monroe's last known address, a small brownstone in Logan Square, lights dark, curtains drawn. Hale's flashlight cut across the living room when they forced the door. The place smelled of dust and stale perfume. Nothing looked disturbed at first, but then Jennings spotted it on the dining table. A single object carefully placed, a chessboard. Every piece was missing except the rooks. 2 white rooks, facing each other across the empty board. Jennings exhaled sharply. Case 3 again, but Hale noticed something else. Beneath one rook, taped to the board, was a metro ticket, one way, time-stamped for that very night, less than 2 hours earlier. The destination, Clark and Lake Station. Hale's pulse quickened. The killer was leaving breadcrumbs, but not random ones, precise, timed almost as if he knew their every move. Jennings checked her watch. If she took this train, Hale cut her off. She's still out there. And if we don't move now, we'll lose her. He'd pocketed the ticket, but as they turned to leave, Hale froze. On the inside of the apartment door, in the faint beam of his flashlight, he saw it, another Polaroid taped low, near the handle, positioned so they'd only see it on their way out. It was a photo, the 2 of them standing in the morgue, taken minutes earlier. The killer hadn't just been watching. He'd been in the room with them. The Chicago L was still running when Marcus Hale and Captain Jennings reached Clark and Lake Station. Midnight had thinned the crowds but not emptied them. A handful of night workers, drifters, and sleepless wanderers huddled on benches beneath the sickly glow of fluorescent lights. Hale scanned the platform, every face a potential mask. Jennings spoke low, her breath fogging in the chill. If Rachel Monroe boarded with this ticket, then either she's alive and moving, or the killer staged another performance. Either way, Hale muttered, this is where the trail leads. The rumble of an approaching train filled the tunnel. The headlights flared, painting the concrete in a harsh white. The train screeched to a halt, doors sliding open with a metallic hiss. Passengers disembarked, indifferent to the 2 detectives. Hale stepped inside the car. empty except for a homeless man slumped in the corner, snoring into a torn jacket. The seat smelled of disinfectant overlaid with something else, something faintly metallic. Jennings' flashlight beam swept the floor, and there it was, a smear of red, half hidden beneath a bench. Blood. Beside it lay a folded slip of paper, deliberately placed. Hale crouched, gloved fingers retrieving it. The note was written in the same neat hand as before. "The past rides with you. Look closer." Jennings' eyes darted around the car, nerves sharp. He's playing with us, again. But Hale's attention caught on the blood. It wasn't random. The smear curved across the floor, dragging toward the rear door. He followed the trail into the next car, empty. Only silence, broken by the rattling of the train's motion. At the far end, taped to the glass window, was another Polaroid. Hale tore it free. The image showed Rachel Monroe, alive, terrified, her mouth gagged, eyes wide, sitting in what looked like a storage room. Concrete walls, a single overhead bulb. Jennings looked over his shoulder, her voice tight. "She's alive. Which means he's controlling the clock," Hale finished grimly. The train screeched to a stop. Doors slid open. But before Hale could move, the homeless man from the previous car appeared in the doorway, no longer slumped. His eyes met Hale's with eerie calm. Then he whispered, "You're late." Hale's hand snapped to his gun. Jennings flanked instantly, but the man raised both palms. His voice was hoarse, his tone strange. "I'm not him. I'm just a messenger." "Messenger for who?" Hale barked. The man smiled faintly, revealing a chipped tooth. "For the one who knows you better than you know yourself." He leaned closer, breath sour. "Check under your seat." Before Hale could react, the man shoved himself backward into the crowd spilling onto the platform. Within seconds, he vanished into the sea of commuters, leaving only confusion in his wake. Hale spun back into the car, dropped to his knees, and reached beneath the bench where he'd first spotted the blood. His fingers brushed cold plastic. He pulled it out, a recorder. He clicked play. The device crackled, and then Rachel Monroe's voice filled the car. Strained, trembling, but clear. "Detective Hale, if you're hearing this, he says you already know me. He says you've seen me before. I don't know where I am. Please find me before he..." Her voice broke into static, and then another voice overrode it. "The killer, I told you, Marcus. Solve the 12. Every ghost has its turn. Miss one, and she dies screaming." The recording cut off with a sharp click. Jennings' face was pale under the fluorescent lights. "You know her." He said, "You know her." Hale shook his head, but nodded at him, hard and merciless. Had he seen Rachel Monroe before? Was she connected to one of the silent 12? The train's intercom crackled. A voice comm, measured, slid through the static. "Not the conductor. Next stop," it said. "Dossier 4. The car lights flickered, plunging them into brief darkness. And in that instant, Hale felt the cameras shudder again, silent, unseen. Somewhere close, someone was still in the car with them. The train rattled into the tunnel, metal grinding against metal, drowning out every sound for a few heartbeats. Hale gripped the recorder tightly, its plastic edges digging into his palm, while his eyes scanned the dark corners of the car. The flickering lights seemed to mock him, strobing shadows into shapes that almost looked human. Jennings kept her pistol low but ready, whispering, "There's someone here. I can feel it." Then movement, a blur near the back of the car. Hale surged forward, shoving past empty seats. But by the time he reached the rear door, it was already swinging open. The next car was empty. No footsteps, no figure, just the hiss of the train's hydraulics, and the sickly smell of iron. Jennings followed, her jaw clenched. "He's leading us again." Another breadcrumb. Hale pointed to the speaker overhead. "No, he's conducting." The voice from the intercom had named Dossier 4. That was one of the silent 12, the 2011 Midway motel case. A prostitute murdered, her body found sprawled across a crimson bedspread. The word "Grace" scrawled in lipstick across the mirror. No suspects, no leads, no justice. The killer wasn't just recreating. He was resurrecting. The train screeched into the next station, brakes screaming. Doors slid open. The platform was deserted. Hal's gut twisted. Something was waiting for them here. "Stay sharp," he muttered, stepping out. The station was dim, one row of lights flickering overhead. Trash skittered across the tiled floor. On the far wall, someone had spray-painted a single word in dripping red. "Grace." Jennings froze. "Christ, he's copying it exactly." But Hale noticed something else. Taped beneath the painted word was a hotel keycard, all faded but still legible. Embossed on the plastic, "Midway Motel, Room 6." Jennings grabbed it, her hands trembling slightly. "This is insane. That case file has been sealed for over a decade. How does he have this?" Hale's jaw tightened. "Because he was there. He's not just imitating the cases, he was part of them." The intercom on the train behind them crackled again. A distorted laugh spilled out, echoing through the empty station. Then words, drawn out, deliberate. "Room 6 awaits you, detective. But hurry. Rachel's time runs thinner than yours." The voice clicked away, leaving only silence and the hum of fluorescent lights. Jennings' eyes locked on Hale. "He knows where we'll go before we even decide. It's like he's watching us from the inside out." Hale didn't respond. His mind spun, dredging up every scrap of memory from the Midway Motel case. He hadn't been the lead, but he remembered the whispers one detective had gone too deep, obsessed with solving it, until his career imploded. Evidence lost, witnesses silenced. It had felt rotten then, and it felt rotten now. The Midway Motel had closed years ago, condemned after a fire. But if the killer wanted them there, then that was where they'd have to go. As they turned to leave, Hale's phone buzzed with a new text. No number, just an image. Rachel Monroe again, bound to a chair, a single light bulb above her head, her eyes swollen from crying, and scrawled across her chest in thick red marker. For Jennings sucked in a breath. "He's marking her, like she's one of the dossiers." Hale's throat tightened. If the killer was numbering Rachel alongside the old cases, then she wasn't just a victim, she was the thread stitching everything together. He shoved the phone back into his pocket, his voice low and certain. "We go to the motel." But as they climbed the stairs to street level, Hale's instincts screamed again. Something was off. He glanced back down at the emptied platform. Another Polaroid had appeared on the bench. This one showed Jennings standing exactly as she was now, one hand on the railing, mouth slightly open in shock. Hale's blood turned to ice. The photo had been taken not seconds ago, which meant the photographer was still here, watching, breathing the same air. The Midway Motel had been dead for years, but it still breathed with ghosts. Its charred remains stood on the edge of the interstate, a hollow skeleton of wood and stone, the neon sign long since broken, its letters hanging crooked in the wind. Room doors gaped open like black mouths, and the smell of burnt fabric lingered in the damp night air. Hale and Jennings pulled up in silence, headlights sweeping across the ruined lot. The place looked deserted, but Hale knew better. The killer wouldn't leave such a clear trail unless he wanted them here. Jennings pulled her coat tighter, her voice low. "This feels wrong." "It's a graveyard." "Exactly," Hale muttered. "And graves hide the truth." They moved across the lot, boots crunching glass. Room 6 sat halfway down, door gone, wall scorched. Hale entered first, gun drawn, the flashlight beam cut across cracked tiles and collapsed furniture. The bed frame was warped metal, the mattress burned away, but on the soot-dark wall, written in red spray paint, was a word, "alive." Jennings stiffened. That wasn't part of the original case. "He's changing the story." Hale's beam caught something glinting in the debris. He bent down. A Polaroid, half burnt at the edges. Rachel Monroe again. Same chair, same bulb above her, but now her mouth was free, mid-scream. In the corner of the photo, blurred but visible, was a shadow of someone else. A figure in a dark coat, face obscured, one hand gripping her shoulder. Jennings whispered, "He's with her." Before Hale could answer, his phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He answered. The killer's voice slid through, a soft, measured, distorted. Do you feel the walls breathing, detective? This room remembers more than the fire. Ask yourself, why was it never solved? Hale gritted his teeth. Because you buried it. The chuckle? Not me. One of your own. Click. Silence. Jennings looked at him sharply. One of our own? Hale, what if a sudden crash from the next room cut her off? They froze, guns raised. Hale motioned silently, and together they crept into room 7. The air smelled of gasoline. On the floor lay a trail of photos, spread like breadcrumbs. Each photo was from a different dossier. The rope from case 7, the chess piece from case 3, the lipstick word grace from case 4. Every artifact lined up like a shrine. And at the end of the trail another recorder. Hale pressed play, Rachel's voice hoarse, broken. He says I'm Dossier 13. He says the others were practice. I'm the performance. Her breathing hitched, panic flooding her words. Please, please find me before. Static. Then the killer's voice layered over hers. Every ghost has a secret, Marcus. Even you. Especially you. Jennings' hand trembled. What the hell does that mean? Before Hale could reply, headlights flashed through the broken window. A car pulling into the lot. Hale signaled Jennings to take cover. He crouched low, weapon steady, as the engine cut and a door slammed. Footsteps crunched glass. Slow, deliberate. Then a beam of light pierced through the open doorway, and a man stepped into view. Not the killer, but someone Hale recognized instantly. Detective Roy Calder, retired, once lead investigator on the Midway Motel case. Calder's face was older, weathered, but his eyes were sharp. He froze when he saw them, tension flaring across his features. Hale, Jennings, you shouldn't be here. Jennings aimed her gun higher. Funny, Calder, we were about to say the same thing. Hale's stomach turned cold. Calder, the one whose career had imploded after the motel case. The one rumored to have buried leads. And now, standing in the ashes, looking like he already knew too much. Calder raised his hand slowly, his voice even. If you want the truth about Dossier 4, you'll need to hear what I buried. Detective Roy Calder's eyes flickered from Hale to Jennings and back, the flickering remnants of the motel's neon sign casting half his face in shadow. He looked tired, older than his years, but there was a hard edge of steel in his posture that Hale hadn't seen in years. You shouldn't be here, Calder repeated, his voice low, almost a warning. You don't understand what you're walking into. Hale's hand remained steady on his weapon. Try me. We've been following breadcrumbs all night, and it's led us to. You care to explain? Calder sighed, rubbing a hand across his face. I buried the motel case. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. He's patient, methodical. The silent 12 weren't random. Each one was a warning, a test. And the Midway Motel, well, that was mine to hide. Jennings' voice was sharp. You mean to say? The killer's been inside the department all along, watching us. Calder shook his head. Not watching you, watching the patterns. You all, Hale included, were moving pieces. He knew the city better than anyone, knew who would chase what, when, and now he's raising the stakes. Rachel Monroe is his crown jewel. Hale felt a chill that went beyond the night air. Crown jewel? You mean cheese? The 13th. Yes, Calder admitted reluctantly. He's numbering the living against the dead. Dossier 13. That's her. He's orchestrating it so that each old failure we couldn't solve brings us closer to her. And closer to him. Hale's mind raced, dredging memories of the silent 12 shards of broken glass, red twine, lipstick messages, chess pieces. Each signature, each cruel little mark, was now a thread pulling toward Rachel. Jennings stepped closer. Then where is she? Where is he holding her? Calder's jaw tightened. I don't know exactly, but I know the pattern. He doesn't work alone, yet he doesn't reveal himself. He recreates scenes from the old dossiers, and wherever he recreates them, she's nearby. Think like him. He wants you to follow the echoes. Every room, every mark, every small clue, it's all leading you to her. Hale's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. Another Polaroid had appeared. This time, Rachel was standing, her back to the camera, facing a wall covered in old crime photos. But one new detail made Hale's blood run cold. Behind her, a shadow, unmistakably human, taller than anyone else in the frame, watching. The patterns accelerating, Hale muttered. Each case is merging into the next. He's forcing us to finish what we never could. Calder's eyes narrowed. And if you fail. Hale didn't finish the thought. The sound of snapping glass echoed through the burned-out motel rooms, and all three spun toward the noise. From the corner of room 6, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Tall, lean, movements deliberate. Hale's grip tightened on his weapon. The figure tilted their head. Hale caught the glint of something in the dim light. Red twine, wrapped around the wrist. You're behind, the voice said calmly, almost bored. 13 waits for completion. Jennings raised her gun, shaking slightly. Step forward, now. The figure didn't move. Hale felt a familiar knowing in his chest, a mixture of fear and recognition. There was something achingly familiar in the way the killer held himself. The tilt of his head, the measured patience. Calder's hand went to his sidearm. Marcus, it's him. He's one of us. Or, he was trained by one of us. Someone you trusted. The killer's lips curved into a faint, chilling smile. Detective Hale. Captain Jennings. I've been waiting a long time for you to arrive. Hale's mind flashed. Every case, every failure, every unsolved murder. He had walked right into the trap. And now, standing before him, the puppeteer of the Silent 12 was finally revealing himself. Yet Rachel Monroe still hung in the balance, her life tethered to their next move. Hale took a careful step forward. Then tell me, before I lose her. Why? The killer's smile widened. Because the story isn't about me. It's about you, and the mistakes you'll make before you save her. And with that, he disappeared into the ruins of the motel, leaving Hale, Jennings, and Calder alone in the echoing darkness, the Polaroids fluttering around them like dying leaves. The wind off Lake Michigan bit through their coats as Hale, Jennings, and Calder stepped out of the burnt motel. The city stretched before them, darkened streets glowing faintly under the amber haze of streetlights. Every corner seemed to whisper, every alleyway a possible trap. Hale's mind raced, piecing together the fragments the killer had left. 12 unsolved cases, each a macabre fingerprint, now stitched together by one living thread. Rachel Monroe. And the killer had chosen tonight to escalate. Where do we start? Jennings asked, voice tight. The man disappeared into thin air, the motel's ruins. There's nothing left but ash and shadows. Hale scanned the streets, catching a reflection in a puddle. A figure, tall, moving deliberately in the distance. Red twine wrapped around his wrist, almost like a signature. The killer, watching, waiting. Calder muttered, he wants a chase. That's what he does. He recreates the dossiers, forces you to walk the same path, make the same mistakes. Every wrong step, she suffers. The trio followed, careful to keep their distance, turning down streets and alleys that twisted like a maze. Hale's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating shattered windows, graffiti, and the occasional homeless figure who melted away before they could be noticed. A sudden sound made Hale freeze, the snap of a camera shutter. He spun, gun raised, but saw nothing. Jennings pulled back sharply. Everywhere we go, he's watching. Every move. It's like the city itself is his mirror. The figure ahead paused near a derelict warehouse. Hale motioned for Jennings and Calder to fan out. They crept closer, keeping low, hearts pounding. Inside the warehouse, Hale caught a glimpse of Rachel, bound, gagged, sitting on a chair in the center of a circle drawn in chalk. Around her, Polaroids from all 12 dossiers were pinned to the walls, each with a single word scrawled across it: rope, glass, grace, fire, silence, blood. Jennings whispered, he's turning the city into a shrine. Every victim, every unsolved murder, right here. Hale's stomach churned. The killer wasn't just recreating the past, he was rewriting it, forcing them to confront their failures in real time. Suddenly, the warehouse door slammed behind them. They spun. Shadowed figures blocked the exits. Two men, faces obscured, armed. Calder growled, drawing his weapon. Ambush, the voice echoed from the darkness, calm, deliberate, and ice-cold. Detective Hale, Captain Jennings. I told you, the story isn't about me. It's about you. Every step, every hesitation counts. The figures advanced, dragging chains along the floor. Rachel's muffled cries rose in panic. Hale fired a shot, forcing one of the men back. Jennings followed, precise, lethal. Calder tackled the other, the gun swinging dangerously close. Amid the chaos, Hale caught sight of the killer's shadow slipping along the wall. The game had changed. He wasn't just orchestrating, they were now running his maze inside his trap. One of the chains snagged Hale's leg, jerking him to the ground. He rolled, fired again, and glimpsed the killer standing atop a mezzanine, red twine glinting, hands raised in mock surrender. You see, the killer called down. Every dossier leads here. Every failure brings you closer. And yet, you hesitate. 13 waits for the final move. Hale's pulse thundered. He had to think fast. Every second they wasted, Rachel's life hung by a thread. Jennings shouted, Hale, follow the chalk marks. They're his pattern. Hale's eyes darted. The circle drawn in chalk extended across the floor, connecting each Polaroid in a web. He realized the killer had left a trail, literally, a sequence they had to follow to reach Rachel without triggering the next trap. He grabbed Jennings' arm. Move, step carefully. Every mark counts. Together, the three of them navigated the maze. Each Polaroid seemed to pulse under the dim lights, as if daring them to falter. The shadows twisted, voices whispered, and Hale could feel the killer watching, inside and out, from some invisible perch. At last, they reached the chair where Rachel slumped. Hale cut the ropes, Jennings checking for tripwires, Calder covering the exits. Rachel's eyes met Hale's. Terror and recognition flashed across her face. You found me, she whispered. Before they could breathe, a single Polaroid fluttered to the floor. Hale picked it up. It was a photograph of all three of them standing there, taken from above. The killer wasn't finished. He was still here. Hale's hand shook slightly as he studied the latest Polaroid. The photograph captured the three of them, Hale, Jennings, and Calder, standing over Rachel Monroe, just as they were. But the angle, the perspective, impossible. The camera had been above them, perfectly aligned, as if someone had orchestrated every detail from the shadows. He's here, Hale said, voice low, tense. Watching. The entire time. Jennings tightened her grip on her gun. Then we need to flush him out. No more gains. Calder's eyes darted around the warehouse, scanning the mezzanine, the broken rafters, and the dark corners. This isn't about visibility. He's controlling perception. He's feeding you what you think is real. Hale's mind raced. The Silent 12, the new case, the staged death of Rachel Monroe, it all led to this. To him, to Jennings, to Calder, to a confrontation that had been planned years in advance. Then came a sound, a faint click, followed by a slow, deliberate clap. From the shadows of the mezzanine, a figure emerged, tall, impeccably dressed despite the ruin around him, red twine wrapped neatly around his wrist. The killer. Hale's stomach dropped. There was something eerily familiar about his posture, the calm precision in his movements. Marcus Hale, the figure said, voice smooth, almost melodic. Captain Jennings. Detective Calder. Welcome to the culmination of your failures. Hale's eyes narrowed. Enough games. Who are you? The killer's lips curled into a smile. I am the echo of every case you could never solve. I am the hand that guides the past into the present, and I am one of you. Jennings' voice was sharp. One of us? You mean you were inside the department? The killer tilted his head. Closer than that. I trained them. I watched, I waited, and I learned. The Silent 12. Each one was a rehearsal. Rachel Monroe. She is the final performance. Calder stepped forward, gun raised. Roy Calder, Midway Motel. You're telling me you? The killer raised a hand. I didn't act alone at first, but I knew when the time was right. And now the game is complete. Unless you falter. Hale's gaze darted to Rachel, who trembled in the center of the chalk circle. Every Polaroid, every artifact, every clue had been leading them here. And now the killer revealed himself as the puppet master, orchestrating not just the past but their present choices. The killer's eyes, cold and calculating, swept over them. You've been trained to chase, to follow, to analyze. But this requires a choice. One wrong move, and she dies. One hesitation, and all 12 ghosts will haunt you forever. Hale's mind worked furiously. The circle of chalk on the floor, the sequence of Polaroids. This wasn't just a trap. It was a test, a puzzle designed to force them to confront every mistake they'd ever made in their careers. Jennings muttered, "He's not just a killer. He's making us solve ourselves before we can save her." The killer stepped closer, deliberately exposing a small camera mounted on the mezzanine railing. "Every moment you hesitate is recorded, every decision catalogued. You're not just detectives. You are the final case." Hale's pulse thundered in his ears. "Then we end this." Now, in an instant, Jennings and Calder flanked him, moving strategically toward the killer. But the man was fast, almost preternaturally so. He leaped backward onto a higher beam, maintaining perfect balance despite the ruined structure. "You'll have to do better," he called down, voice echoing, "if you want to finish the story." Hale realized something. The killer had been predicting their moves all along. But one thing he hadn't accounted for: desperation. The bond between the living, the urgency to save Rachel, and the willingness to risk everything. He nodded to Jennings. A silent plan formed between them. Hale would advance, drawing the killer's attention. Jennings would maneuver to cut off his escape, and Calder would protect Rachel. The three moved, a coordinated strike born of years of experience, training, and sheer willpower. For the first time, the killer faltered. His eyes widened ever so slightly, a crack in his perfect composure. Hale lunged, knocking the camera aside. Jennings sprinted to the mezzanine stairs, Calder reaching Rachel. The killer stumbled backward, red twine trailing from his wrist like a grotesque banner. For a moment, the warehouse froze. The shadows paused, and then the final confrontation was inevitable. The warehouse seemed to hold its breath. Hale, Jennings, and Calder advanced cautiously, their boots crunching on shattered glass, eyes locked on the killer's movements. Rachel Monroe sat at the center of the chalk circle, trembling, her eyes wide with fear. The killer's red twine glinted under the dim lights, his posture unnervingly calm. "Ah, you finally arrived at the end," he said, voice eerily melodic. 13. Completion. And yet, the story isn't over. Not until I choose. Hale tightened his grip on his weapon. "Enough games. You're done. Let her go." The killer tilted his head, a faint, chilling smile on his lips. "Detective Hale, Captain Jennings, this was never about Rachel. It was always about you." The silent 12 were the rehearsal. Every failure, every hesitation, every ghost of your past careers, they've led you here. Only by confronting your mistakes can you earn her life. Hale's jaw set. He scanned the chalk circle, noting the sequence of Polaroids, the placement of artifacts, every small detail. "You may have orchestrated this perfectly, but you can't predict courage." The killer's eyes flicked with amusement, almost admiration. "Courage or recklessness. There is a fine line." Jennings motioned to Hale. Now, while he's distracted, Hale lunged forward, forcing the killer backward along the mezzanine beam. The figure scrambled, red twine trailing, precariously balancing on the rusted steel. The sound of metal groaning filled the air. Calder moved to Rachel, cutting the ropes binding her to the chair. She gasped, trembling, and clung to him as he steadied her. "You're safe now," Calder whispered. The killer, realizing the distraction, tried to leap to an adjacent beam, but Hale anticipated it. He lunged, tackling the figure with all his strength. They crashed to the floor, dust and debris exploding around them. The red twine became tangled, a noose-like trap for the killer himself. The man struggled, fury flashing in his eyes. "Do you understand? This was never about death. It was about truth." Hale pressed his gun to the killer's temple. Your truth killed 12 people, and you tried to make her 13. That's enough. Jennings moved closer, securing the killer's hands with zip ties. Calder checked Rachel, pale, exhausted, but alive. Relief washed over Hale, fierce and sharp. And then the killer spoke one final time, a whisper that carried a weight of obsession. The dossiers. Your failures. They will follow you forever. You cannot erase them. You can only survive them. Hale looked at him, expression hard. We survived you. Police sirens echoed in the distance. Reinforcements had arrived. The killer's red twine trailed like a symbol of his twisted game. Now mobilized, defeated, Rachel Monroe took a shaky breath, stepping toward Hale. I don't know how to thank you. I thought I was going to die. Hale shook his head. We all make it through, together. Jennings glanced around at the Polaroids pinned to the walls, the remnants of the silent 12 cases, each a painful memory now marked by resolution. They're finally done, she said softly. Calder added, but we'll never forget them. Or what this man made us face. Hale pocketed the last Polaroid, the one of him, Jennings, and Calder from the warehouse floor. A reminder of the journey, the fear, the lessons forced upon them. The killer was taken into custody, finally unmasked. His identity revealed as a former forensics analyst, brilliant and meticulous, obsessed with perfection and control. Each unsolved case had been a reflection of his own warped ideals, flawless, untouchable, and carefully hidden. As Hale escorted Rachel out into the cool night, the city's lights glimmering off wet streets, he felt a strange sense of closure. The silent 12 were finally laid to rest. 13 was safe, and though the shadows of past failures lingered, the nightmare that had haunted them all was over, at least. For now the Chicago skyline stretched above, cold and indifferent, yet somehow brighter than it had the night the Dossier first arrived. Hale exhaled a long, hard breath. The game was done. The city could sleep tentatively, but alive. And in the darkness, somewhere, a single Polaroid fluttered to the ground, a silent reminder that some ghosts never truly disappear.